Kelly, so nice to see you today. I'm so excited to have this conversation, and thank you so much for spending some time on a Friday to be with me, Curdy D.
Oh my gosh. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be chatting with you.
I have been so looking forward to this. And just to give the audience some context, we met through your brother, Jim Young, who I didn't know that he has a nickname called Jimmy. So
Yeah, that's right. That's what I grew up calling him, and I always forget because but that's not how other people know him.
he's quite the Jimmy, though. I was just with him in San Diego at the Esri user conference this last week. I think it was my 10th or 11th time. And
Oh, wow.
he's become one of my dear friends, and I just have so much love and respect for him. And we've been on a similar journey. We were both sort of like entrepreneurs that came into Esri, and we were both there a similar time. I think I was there 6 years. I think he might've been there 7. And then we both have kind of gone off to do our own kind of startups post Esri. And I just have so much admiration and respect for him because he's so smart and he's so humble. And when I got to meet you and getting ready for this interview, we chatted a while back, I could see where he gets some of it from. It must be in the family. So.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I have to say, I know he feels exactly the same way about you because he told me.
Yeah, he's so sweet.
He thinks so highly of you.
Yeah, anybody out there that's a mapping geek, check out Atomic Maps. That's Jim Young's awesome mapping business. And yeah, in prepping for this, I was doing a little scuttlebutt, and on LinkedIn, we have some awesome mutual contacts. Heather Mason, who is she's an OG event gal as well. Amber Case, who we worked with at Esri, Z Holly. So some really awesome switched on women.
Oh, yeah. So great.
And then fun fact, I met Richard Saul Warman through Jack Dangerman at the Esri conference, probably 2015. And I got to spend about 30 minutes on a private kind of one-on-one with him. And that was a real trip. Did you ever work with him?
He's amazing. No, I joined TED after he sold it to Chris Anderson, who was my boss there. But I did attend the conference when he ran it. So I know him, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but he is, he's amazing. He's brilliant, and he's done all sorts of incredible things, including, start that conference, which, believe it or not, was back in 1984.
Yeah, incredible. I think that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about in the context of this is this idea of it's storytelling, and then it's creating these movements. And how do you create sort of this network that, some of the stuff you guys did, like with TEDx, I had done a TEDx talk at Santa Barbara at my alma mater, UC Santa Barbara. And it was grassroots and it was ground up and it was so cool. So there's so much that I'm excited to talk to you about. But maybe for context, we could do a quick survey of their career. And having said that, congrats on the new gig with the Edelman Fossil Park in South New Jersey. When you were telling me about it, just outside of Philly, and about all these cool, fossils, and you guys just found a shark tooth. And I can't wait to take my dad because he's goo goo gaga about fossils.
Oh, yeah, you've got to bring him out. It is amazing. It's going to open in spring of 2024, and it sort of brings you in with the wonder of, fossils and dinosaurs, and then shows humans and the tiny place we occupy in space and time, and the outsized impact that we're making on the planet, and shows you that you can do something about it too. But it's also it's an amazing experience, and people can come and dig for fossils too.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So give us a little context about the fossil park.
Well, so it's on this scientifically significant fossil quarry that is in South New Jersey, and they have found over 100,000 specimens there, and over 100 different species. It is owned by, it's a part of Rowan University, and we are building this 44,000 square foot beautiful museum that is going to be the largest carbon net zero facility in New Jersey.
Wow, great. And what was sort of the gravity and inspiration for you to go jam with those guys?
Well, I think as part of my career journey, I kind of got to this point where I just realized I wanted to always do work that makes an impact and sort of fuels purpose for me. And I decided, in thinking that through, I was thinking about, I think that the situation with our planetary health that we face right now is as important as anything can be. And I think in this museum takes on learning and knowledge and all of that, and also ways that, teaches and supports ways that we can take action to make our planet healthier. And so it's like that combined with the fact that I love building things and creating experiences that do tell stories and engage people with like feeling and meaning. And so there is like nothing I could imagine being more excited to do right now.
Yeah, that's an impeccable segue for one of the themes I wanted to talk to you about in the context of storytelling. One of my favorite storytellers is Duke Stump. He's a mentor of mine. He's based in Ojai, and incredible career journey. He was a marketing leader at Nike and the CMO that put Seventh Generation on the map and did the turnaround at Lululemon. And I've had the great pleasure of collaborating with him when I was at Lime. And he has this concept called see, feel, change. And it was something that really made an impact on me when I was at Esri, because we were dealing with mapping content, and that principle of see, feel, change was so kind of embedded into the map, where you see some insight. You want to ask the map the question, and then it creates some sort of emotion that gives people conviction to go take a direction and go, run a strategy or a campaign or et cetera. And that's sort of the change. And when this last week, Jim, your brother, when he was with us, he had this incredible booth with atomic maps. And that was a big part of his whole narrative, was seeing. And he even, and we got into this whole see, feel, change discussion that he got really excited about. And that's, I think, really what a great framework or environment, I guess, for you to be able to bring people in and have such a context around, here was a species that kind of ruled the earth and now they're gone. And, giving people that experience about like what's at stake for humans.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And that's such a great, I love that idea as a framework, because I think you're right about that. And that's really what that see, feel, change idea is really what we're, looking to achieve with this museum. And it's also what, some of the best talks, the best books, everything. It's that leading you to feel something from what you've just seen or learned or experienced that then changes the course of your life. It's when you know that something's really successfully communicated and translated,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody knows, I think, the TED Talk. I think I'd be shocked to meet somebody that hasn't seen or heard a TED Talk. So there's so much to unpack there, but taking like one step kind of backwards, you were kind of in between step. You were at Clubhouse for a bit, and kind of during pandemic. And Clubhouse was so incredible. I remember getting invited to it. We were quarantining at our desert house in Joshua Tree, and we were so remote out there. And one of my really connected VC friends invited me. Actually, no, it was Lily that works for will.i.am invited me. And
oh, really?
Yeah, Lily?
Stephanie, who used to work for will.i.am, worked with me at Clubhouse.
Oh, fun. Yeah. And then she's totally not somebody that would just send a thing. So when she sent it, I was like, oh, this is cool. And I jumped in, and it was magic, especially in that context of being, in the pandemic and like hearing all my friends and being able to jump into these conversations. It was remarkable. What did you do at your time at Clubhouse?
Well, my role there was overseeing thought leader programming and partnerships on the platform. So, one of the organizations we partnered with was TED, and we brought a lot of TED speakers on and led conversations with them, but kind of did that through a lot of the clubs on the platform. And really just I think it's an amazing opportunity for some of the conversations that, we just listened to be opened up more broadly. I mean, when I left, Clubhouse is beginning to focus more on smaller groups and smaller intimate conversations, because it is sometimes harder to have those intimate conversations with large rooms full of people. But I think being able to have discussion with people, that you haven't met yet, and to cross like cultural boundaries that would normally exist in certain, social situations and stuff like that. It's a great platform for being able to connect with people and learn new perspectives. And I thought, sort of being able to do that for work was just so fascinating. It was an interesting time also in just life too. A lot of need for connection at a lot of the time that I worked there too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you were there, so I'm looking kind of like, yeah, through the pandemic, that must have been just an incredible time. One of my best friends, Tyler Crowley, who's been on the podcast, he was Jason Calacanis' right-hand man for a long time. And he runs a clubhouse every day out of his little resort that he lives out in Thailand. And he's basically doing tech news around the world, and has this international group that gets together on Clubhouse, and they just chop it up about the news, every single day, today and tomorrow. And he has a really engaged community, and I'll see him pop in online. I'll see it, the notification. Sometimes I'll jump in, and it's just so cool hearing him hold court and getting, these different perspectives from all around the world. He'll have a panelist from Taiwan or somebody in, Sweden, or et cetera, et cetera. And I just have to applaud like his, leveraging this free platform to like build this conversation and community worldwide. It's remarkable.
I think that's an amazing use of that platform too, is really thinking about how you unpack the news with other people, and how different parts of the world take in different news that we're hearing, and then figuring out how you make sense of what is happening in the world.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about Tyler's Clubhouse. Tyler Crowley, for anybody interested, check it out. He does try to unvarnish the sort of national bias and get different people's perspectives and hear what's going on. And it's, and I think, that compounding daily, he has a very interesting pulse on what's happening. So, which I think is a great segue into TED. So you were there almost 18 years. You were the head of the conference. You were the last 4 years you were there, and then you were content director for a long time. And those are big jobs. Essentially, you ran the show, right? Is that fair to say?
Well, I mean, it was a big job. I did start there when we were a tiny team working out of Chris Anderson, who owned it, out of his apartment in New York. And there were, just a couple of us. And so it was really amazing to be there as a group from a, once a year conference that was, I started working there before even online video was possible. So it was a once a year conference, and then really grew to become so much more than that. And it was an amazing journey, and it still is for them. I think TED is the most incredible organization. I still feel so close to them, and in fact did a little bit of work on the April conference as well. But it's just an amazing organization that I love the way that, that they're able to bubble up through TED and through TEDx ideas from all around the world, and celebrate different ways of thinking about stuff and solutions to challenges that we all face from everywhere.
Yeah. What's sort of a highlight that comes to mind that you're most grateful for or proud of, or an achievement that, just really makes your heart warm when you think about it?
Oh my gosh. I mean, so many things. I mean, I think one of the things that TED as an organization did that, was really such an important part of its evolution was, TEDx, which is allowing people around the world to run an event following a set of guidelines that celebrates ideas locally in their community. But what that then led to was like this whole global community of curious people coming together. And I think just, the community that has been built and continues to build and grow out of that is just amazing. And I think anytime, that it feels really special to be able to hear people tell stories of talks that were meaningful to them, talks that like helped people understand themselves or understand the world better or spurred them into action in some way. Like that's just anytime you hear anything like that, I just feel so grateful to have been part of the journey.
Oh, that just gave me chills because I had my own personal experience with TEDx where I think I did the talk in 2010 and we had just launched City Sourced, a company I co-founded in 2009. And I had this remarkable experience where I had been given the gift of hearing in 2007 at the House Ear Clinic. So I was born without ear canals. It was a congenital condition called the congenital atresia. And so I basically had like 35-40% hearing loss. It was like living with earplugs in your ears,
Wow.
persistently. So I would always have to sit in the front row of class and read lips. And it was, I could get by, but it was, it was definitely a challenge. I was hard of hearing. And when there was some new technology that came out, Cochlear folks down in Australia, in Sydney, invented this Baha bone anchored hearing aid. And I got it set up in '07 and it was like lights on. And I used to pray, God, like, if you give me ears to hear, I'll do my little part to change the world. And literally that happened in '07. I had been in the real estate biz. I got completely wiped out in '08 with the great financial crisis. And my mentor, Duke, that I was telling you about with Sea Field Change, he gave me this exercise called Imagine the Day. And it was like, if Curdy D, like if you were to do a design around like the next bit of your career, like what would that be? And, I got clear on my requirements. I wanted to do something that was, in tech, a software business. I wanted to be a social enterprise. I wanted to be dealing with a B2B buyer and not a consumer buyer. And I wanted to be on an airplane once a month, getting to go to conferences, getting paid to learn and travel and meet people. And then literally within 3 months of doing that, I met my technical co-founder. And then within a year, we were on the main stage at TechCrunch Disrupt, thanks to Jason Calacanis and Tyler Crowley, who sourced it and got us on the stage. And then everybody started knocking, and I sort of did the whole Silicon Valley shuffle on Sand Hill Road, and then got opportunities to, speak at TEDx. And I remember those were the early experiences where I shared my story publicly about my hearing. And I was very like sort of vain and ashamed about this. And I had insight that, it was a time to like evolve. And it was those platforms that gave me the opportunity to like publicly, have breakthroughs. And I could imagine that's sort of a long kind of context,
Wow.
but the sort of kindling that the TED conference provided and this sort of like this TEDx, I think I can only imagine how many young leaders have been sort of sparked or encouraged or birthed out of these events, whether they're, organizing them or speaking them. For example, there's a gal that is helping us with Real World named Talia Jacqueline, and she just did a TEDx 2 months ago that she spoke at in Rhode Island. And she had a very similar thing to me. There are some very personal things that she shared in her TEDx talk that were, I think, new news to the world. And I think it was really impactful for her. But back to, the spirit of TED and these stories is like, how do you, I guess that's the power of narrative and this idea of being kind of communication and sharing and, I think authenticity. So I don't know, any sort of reaction or thoughts to any of this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you're right. I'm curious to know too what the reaction after you shared your talk was, because I think, I mean, it is sometimes really hard for us to share these personal things. Certainly not all TED Talks have the personal angle, but when they do, it like you kind of find, I think, a lot of these speakers that I know that I've talked to about it have found that they shared something that felt really hard to share in some ways, but also felt maybe really important. And that it connects with so many people. And then you're kind of realize that you're not alone. I mean, that the
Yeah.
hard things that you struggle with, even if someone has not experience the exact same thing. There are so many people who can relate, and there's something that is also really useful in the knowing we're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree wholeheartedly. And the reaction that I had was it like it was magic. It was like, oh wow, like I sort of like stepped through this kind of imaginary barrier, and it was a lot more comfortable and intimate and alive on the other side of that barrier. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so
Yeah.
good to hear.
Yeah. So
That's
I guess I have a very similar feeling to my time at Esri that it seems like you do at TED, because it's such an interesting community and it's so special. And there is kind of like this network. And how do you think about, or like, maybe a simple question, like, why did TEDx have such a kind of explosive kind of viral effect? Like, how did you guys figure out how to get people to take it and make it their own and multiply?
it really like it's I mean I don't think I wish that you could look back and go, oh, we knew exactly what we're doing, and we
Mhm.
but I think really it was to like the bold vision of really Chris Anderson, who runs TED, who owns TED. He was really when he bought it from Richard Saul Wurman, he bought it, his nonprofit bought it. It's a nonprofit, and really made the goal of it to that its ideas were spreading. And so really to think about how widely can you spread ideas? What are ways that ideas can spread really widely? And so, when TEDx launched, we didn't know, will it compete with the conferences? Will it? But I think it was really kind of an idea that came up in reaction to so many people as this talk started to go online. People from around the world sort of became familiar with them, and they were they were curious people who wanted to just learn about a lot of different things. And they would say, oh, you should bring TEDx to Sao Paulo, you should bring TEDx to Shanghai, or TED, sorry, because there was no TEDx. You should bring
Yeah.
TED to these places. And we just were a small team, and like loved the idea of doing that, and loved the idea of learning from people in regions of the world where we were maybe less likely to find people on our own, because being based in North America. And so we're thinking, like, how can we do that? And then we were kind of like, well, maybe you should do that. Maybe you should do that. And so really started TEDx to just like see what would happen there. And I think we didn't know how many people would want to do that, because it's a volunteer, if you're a TEDx organizer, you're putting on a major event with all kinds of AV equipment, all sorts of stuff.
And a strict brand guideline with TED, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you're saying, I want to do this because I care about it. So it just brings together all these curious people. And I think then what happens, I mean, and again, this is something we observed and learned, is people sort of find their people this way. If you have not been able to exist in a world with lots of people who want to learn about a lot of different things, and you do too, then suddenly you go to an event like a TED or a TEDx, and you're like, wow, the people here are incredible, because we can all learn together, and they want to talk about ideas and things like that. And so just really watching how that coming together of people around and sort of knowledge-based content is just sort of amazing to watch. And so then from there we really learned from everybody else and what they were doing, and just leaned into the community aspect of it, because it was incredible. It is incredible.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it was a function of the market speaking to you guys and you guys listening and just being pragmatic, but embedded in the positioning of the brand, ideas that spread. It's sort of like, in hindsight, it's obvious.
It is. It's easy to look back and sort of see how it worked and why it worked. But, at the time, I mean, I remember even like back before my time, working at TED, when Richard Saul Wurman did start the conference, it was like, that was the first time anybody, as far as I know, that anybody brought together, TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And people were really like, didn't bring together these multiple disciplines and think about how, like, you might learn from a designer, but you are an accountant or something like that, and like the ways we can learn from other disciplines. And I think that was how kind of the idea upon which he founded, really those three areas, actually: technology, entertainment, and design, which doesn't really include accounting, but it falls in there, But I mean, I think that was a giant innovation. It's something so many people do now. And so it's easy to kind of look back and see how, of course, things worked, but all along the way, we just learn about how we learn, right?
Yeah. Was there an internal positioning in TED, like Starbucks has like third place? Or was ideas that spread also the positioning? Because it's sort of rare to have the public kind of slogan to be also the positioning statement.
It was really, though. I think it was really ideas were spreading. And really we were thinking about how can we be open. And then also there are other parts of it, like be really committed to sound science and all sorts of things like that. But it's a pretty broad mission. And it was that way internally as well.
So you call Richard Saul Wurman RWS? Is that the
RSWS? I mean, sort of, internally, that's like, I mean, or Richard, or some people call him Ricky. Some people actually call him Saul. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. My wife's father's name was Saul. Cool name. Did you think he ever, I mean, the question in my was like, now that I think about it, the answer is probably no. The question was, do you think he'd ever thought it would be this big? Because if the answer was yes, he probably wouldn't have sold it. Why did he sell it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I actually don't know why he sold it. I don't think Chris knew that it was going to be this big when he bought it either, because, I mean, again, so he bought it in 2001, and I think online video didn't become a thing until 2005 or something like that. And then we started posting the talks in 2006, which is then right after that, I think TEDx started in 2007 and stuff. But it was those things that made it so much more than just an annual conference. But even when it was an annual conference, I mean, it felt so special, and it still does, to go and attend, because it's also that same feeling of like you go and then it feels amazing to be around so many people that want to learn and ask questions together.
Yeah. It's sort of like the Met Gala for people that I find a little more interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think nobody knew what it would become, because it was hard to imagine even what online video was capable of, right? And so, I think it was just fun to watch and participate and be surprised ourselves as it grew. Yeah.
Is there a TED Talk that maybe top 3 TED Talks that come to mind that are just like, near and dear to your heart? Maybe not your favorite, but that come to mind.
There are so many, and so many with good stories. I mean, I have for a long time, I would never have answered the question of what was my favorite TED Talk, because I do have so many that I love. But there is a really powerful talk by this woman, Olutome Edegbe, who is a Nigerian journalist, who, it's called something like How We Live in Cities, and it's really about humanity. And she does this really beautiful job of, she's talking about people in informal settlements and the way in which they're invisible but important parts of society. And she kind of does this beautiful job of pointing out how we're all part of the problem, but without pointing the finger. So you understand yourself it's just amazing. And every time I watch it, I feel so emotional about it. So I highly recommend that one. I think Susan Cain's talk from quite a number of years ago on introversion is amazing, because to me, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm probably really an ambivert, but it helped me understand parts of myself, and it gave me tools for how to better participate in meetings and how to be more effective as employee and as a leader. And so that was one that felt like it really changed me and gave me tools. And then there's another super early one that just, for whatever reason, just came to my mind, because I feel like it's a sleeper and maybe no one's watched it in a long time, because it was back when I don't even know what year it's from, but when we were all starting to learn from each other on YouTube and start to use YouTube as as a way of innovating. And it was sort of like, there was this term that was bounced around a lot called crowd accelerated innovation. And there was this show that was produced by John M. Chu, who, is now big time movie producer, but it was an internet TV show called the LXD, the Legion of Extraordinary Dancers. And there were these dancers that were like superheroes and did this show. And so he came and gave this TED talk, and the dancers came and like had these videos explaining their different kinds of dance. And this is such a beautiful talk. It makes me cry still if I watch it again. I mean, it's just amazing, but it's not the kind of talk that you'd think would make you cry. It's like hip hop dance making you cry. I mean, it doesn't seem like that would happen, but it's just that beautiful and that powerful. And I think it still holds up, even though, we still use that. It's just like part of our lives now. It's not a new thing, the crowd accelerated innovation. And it's a great one too.
I love that. We'll have to link to all of these. So for listeners, these will all be in the show notes. So click in and smile with us. When we talked prepping for this interview, it was kind of a small world. My wife had gone to Wharton, and you mentioned that you were friends with Adam Grant, who's incredible. Why do you think he's had such an impact with his stories?
I mean, for one thing, he's just such a great communicator. And I think he is just able to, he brings actual, scientific knowledge to his work. That's what it is. But he also is just, in a really accessible way, he teaches us all how to be more human as leaders, how to be, how to both look after ourselves and participate in the world in a meaningful way. He's just he gives like good, clear ways of thinking about things. And I feel like I learn from him all the time, whether it's something I see on Instagram or something I hear him say. And he's just, if you try out one or two of the things he suggests, you'll find that he's really right.
Yeah, it's rooted in data and science. So it's probably some of it has to do with, it feels like a lot of it confirms intuition, but then some of the stuff, it's like counterintuitive. So it sort of always keeps me like engaged in that way. And then it's really digestible, the way that he delivers it. It's approachable, and it's the communication is just remarkable.
He gives you good frameworks for thinking too. I think, like I've read most or maybe all of his books, but one like early one that always is that I find really useful is Givers and Takers, or Give and Take.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Give and Take. That's my favorite one.
Thinking about, it's incredible. And, and he sort of divides the world into, different ways of different approaches to things. And he is someone who, he's reminded me in the past that like having disagreeable givers in the world and in your workspace and all that is really important too.
Yeah. The big insight I got from that book is I am a giver 100%, but that there was two sort of classes of givers. There was the givers that sort of give, I'm not going to use the right words, but they'll give to anybody indiscriminately. And then there's the givers that are sort of, have a framework around who they give to. And it's a lot of times they're giving to other givers. And that the givers that give to other givers outperform everybody, and the givers that give to everybody underperform everybody. Right, and that was just insane. Like be able to distill that out was just remarkable. When I did a fair bit of speaking when I was at Esri on their circuit, we had a guy named John Calkins. We called him the meat grinder, and he would basically be the guy that like, you go through his whole program, make sure that the stories were well done. It's such an art form and a science, I guess. For you guys at TED, what are sort of the do's and don'ts of storytelling, like at a high level?
I think the do's are, you can couple a lot of the do's with don'ts, right? But I think something that you mentioned earlier that I think is just about as important as it gets is authenticity. I do kind of share stuff in the way that feels right to you. And I think a lot of people like to joke about TED Talk formulas and things like that. And there are some like really funny comedic acts that, give fake TED Talks or whatever. But the reality is there is no formula, and the best talks are just like what actually someone wants to design for themselves. And that's it. That's authentic to the way that they think or talk or, or live in the world. And So I think that that's really important. And I think, for anybody who may be listening that is preparing a talk, no matter what, it is always, always so useful to run it by someone. I mean, if you can do it with a speaker coach or something, great. But if not, like the thing is that when we give talks, we all know our own content really well. And so what you don't know is how to meet other people sometimes, like how your audience is understanding what you're saying. So it's really useful to sort of like give the talk to someone and get that feedback. And I think, as people write their talks, to think about, instead of thinking about what's the thing I have to say, it's like, what is the thing I have to give to people that they would like to receive from me, that would be useful for them to receive from me.
Yeah.
And that's a really different framing, actually.
Yeah, I studied communications at UC Santa Barbara, and that reminds me of my studies. There was a concept called the index of fidelity, and this idea that, you have this idea, and how when you communicate it, there's distortion, and what's the percent that actually the respondent receives of your idea, and to sort of try to work backwards to get that fidelity as close to 100% as possible, which is impossible. People might embed in other meanings into it. And I think that's why narrative is so powerful. Songwriting, a lot of people, will write in ways that lets the respondent or the listener kind of enrich the meaning and contextualize it for their own. Yeah, I think that's a great insight, is to be mindful of the impact. It does remind me of a story that my mentor Duke told me, that when he was at Nike, they acquired Hurley. And Bob Hurley was the CEO, and he is now a Nike guy. And he came up and was prepping his speech, and they just told him it was like, completely off script, and it was, can't talk like that. And he ended up doing it. And Duke said it was the best talk he ever heard at Nike. And, it was from the heart. And the guy really gave a shit. Yeah. And people could tell. And it didn't matter that it wasn't like, the formula wasn't to doctrine.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, I think, people do, for TED, people really do typically prepare because they want to, they have a limited amount of time up there, and they want to make sure that they nail it. But I mean, it wasn't always that way. And I do think that, some of people also prepare different ways. And some of the best talks are just when people come in with like an idea of what they want to say, but then just also really are themselves. That not everybody can do that well, but some people can do that so well. I mean, it's, I always, one thing that I always would tell speakers is, like, as much yourself as you possibly can be when you're standing on stage. It's like almost like you are yourself with the volume turned up just 10%.
Yeah, that makes sense. My dad does Toastmasters even to this day, and he's so funny. And he gave a speech at my wedding, and everybody was just so not a dry eye. And he was authentically himself, but he had a framework for it. But his whole thing is speak from the heart and just try to make an emotional connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great advice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much more we can cover, but I want to be mindful of time. So I'm going to turn the page. And one of the things I do on the show is celebrating this concept of humanizing success. Life is not linear. And, there's always something trying to blow us off course. And I think a lot of it is tacking and being sort of, mindful of how to get to your goal. But I guess having said that, I shared some of the challenges I've had. Is there a challenge personally or professionally you're comfortable sharing publicly, Kelly? And how'd you get over the hurdle, and what gift did that pain give you?
Yeah, I think, when you first mentioned that you might ask me this, I was thinking, I was thinking of something different, but I actually think I will take the more vulnerable approach and tell you, I actually had a pretty long, it feels like, period in my life and in my career where I had a pretty bad case of imposter syndrome. I was at TED, and I worked around all these people who were the best at what they did. And, and they were very focused on specific things. And I thought, what if I have a specific thing that I should be doing and I don't know what it is? And, it was really, really almost crippling, except that I had to power through. But I felt, it was quite consuming. And, it went on for like a while, and it was painful. And I was also like, aware that it was imposter syndrome. I was aware of what was going on, and I found it really hard to overcome. But then, the way that I did was starting to, I had one good friend that I worked with that I sort of shared it with, and then she was kind of going through something similar, and then we talked about it, and then it was that thing too of it we were talking about at the beginning about sort of not feeling alone. And over time, in sort of opening up about it a little bit more with people that I was close to, I really realized I wasn't alone. And so many people have either been through it or go through it, or are in the middle of it. And it's really, really common. And I think all of that, I was able to eventually work through it. It doesn't mean it won't happen to me again. But I think it did give me a massive gift in that I feel like I'm able to sort of recognize it in other people. And a lot of times what we see in people when maybe somebody, it doesn't always present itself in other people as like a lack of confidence. And it really isn't even a lack of confidence, it's something different than that. But just kind of recognizing, we all struggle and we're all humans. And I think it helped me, be both a better colleague and a better leader, having gone through it and really being aware of what it feels like and what it can do to you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of when I was, talking publicly about my hearing stuff that I was like not, really feeling confident about, and how when you give voice to it, it's not as scary. And it's sort of it's like almost like jumping off the high dive into the pool. And, you just got to take the leap and you get through, and it feels so exhilarating. It's like, oh yeah, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
For you, how did the imposter syndrome manifest? Was it a kind of discomfort, and did you overcompensate somehow? What was it?
Yeah, it was, I don't really know how it felt like often, sometimes I'd be in a meeting and I'd be talking because I needed to speak up about a thing. And that was also even just sometimes because also of that introvert part of me, sometimes I'm not going to be the loudest voice in the room or the first one to speak up about a thing, but I will always make sure my opinion gets out there. But sometimes I'd start talking and then I'd be like, why is everyone looking at me? And this feeling of oh no. And I had that kind of constantly it's the thing you hear about it, but I really felt it I don't know what I'm talking about. Do I know what I'm talking about? I think this, but are people, am I going to be found out? Am I a fraud? I am a fraud. I just really felt that. And I think, I think some people do sort of overcompensate by the really embracing fake it till you make it. That wasn't really exactly me, but I'm sure you could probably tell in some ways that I had this going on, but I think it was more just this thing that I felt and this anxiety that I had, so much of the time, but I still sort of kept going. And then that also, pushing through, and even the idea of fake it till you make it does teach you that, all right, you can keep going and your opinions are valuable and your knowledge is valuable, your skills are valuable. And you start to also, you can be able to work yourself out of it a little bit that way too.
Yeah.
But I think talking about it is best.
Well, thanks again for sharing that. And I can empathize. I've had a fair bit of that. And it does, I'm aware of it, the more ease around it I have. And I can make fun of myself about it.
Yeah. Same.
I know we got a hard stop here. So 2 last questions. I'll make it really quick. If you could have any band, artist, musician, play any venue, past, present, or future, who would it be and where?
Oh my gosh, that's good. It would be Dolly Parton for sure. Where? I don't know exactly where that would be. It would probably be a really great intimate dive bar that fit just enough, all the people that I love, that I feel close to, that I want to have listen to, be in a big group hug listening to Dolly Parton together.
Jolene. I love it.
Jolene.
That's epic. All right. So is there anything the audience can do to be helpful to you, Kelly? Maybe even come out and visit you at the Edelman Fossil Park. Let us know when it opens. And then if people want to get a hold of you, what's a good channel?
Definitely come to the Edelman Fossil Park. It's going to open spring 2024. It is going to be amazing, and would love for all of y'all to come out out and see it. And you can Google it for a little bit of information. We don't even have really a website yet, but it'll all be coming. And also, yeah, I would love to be in touch with anybody who wants to reach out. Best way to reach out to me is to connect on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Kelly Stoetzel,
Kelly
like
Stoetzel.
pretzel. Yeah. And we'll link to it in the show notes. Well, I can't wait to come out to the park, dig some fossils with my dad, who's goo goo gaga about fossils. So we can't wait to see you outside of Philly soon. Kelly, thank you so much. Really lovely to get to spend some time with you today. I hope you have the best weekend and stay awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. Thank you so much for having me, Curdy D.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks again to Kelly Stoetzel for being our guest. I can't wait to go dig some fossils with my dad at Edelman Fossil Park. I'm at Curdy D on Twitter and Instagram, also Kurt TEDx on LinkedIn. Please do give us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/Curdy D. And until next time, Curdy D loves you.